any button. Hey friend, listen. I know the world is scary right now. Corruption, war, inflation, demographics, degeneracy, disease, unrest, hatred, and despair. We didn't come here to tell you how it is, but that it's going to get way better.
Got a good thing coming, and it's all I need. Everything I wanted, so wait and see.
Better by Bitcoin.
Oh, so good.
Great way to start the day.
Makes me
Here we are,
dance.
guys. Welcome to the show, Better by Bitcoin. We have myself, Bondor, JD, and the illustrious Jordan Bush with us.
Illustrious. I don't know what I'm illustrating. Hopefully Jesus. But
This is the pinch hitter who I'm like, hey, are you free?
literally 7 minutes ago.
Yep.
So I put out a hat and not pants, and here I am.
Indeed. Today, we wanted to talk about practically what does Bitcoin actually help people with? Like, what is the actual upside of using Bitcoin in a very practical,
let's go,
rubber hits the road reality, right? As opposed to like, we're going to solve all the world's banking problems, but those are like very distant. I mean, they're all real, but they're very distant from the actual individual who's working a job who is wondering what the F is this Bitcoin thing? Why? Why do people keep hammering on this? What's the big deal here? So I can start us off unless JD, you want to jump in. Yeah, let's get into it.
I'd actually toss it to Jordan first because I think you have the most
hot
well-known one. And I think
minutes.
actually if we start from the well-known and then move to the non-well-known. So like, could you break us down what you've practically seen Bitcoin do? Because I know you've got some examples.
Yeah, I mean, and I would just clarify, like I mean, I have seen, I know Uruguayan people who use Bitcoin, so like but like it's not like I tell the story of there were people in our church when I was pastor in Uruguay, and many of them fled from Venezuela to Uruguay, but almost I don't think any of them that I know of used Bitcoin. Like it's just like in hindsight, like they should have, they could have used Bitcoin if they knew about it. They just didn't. But with that being said, like there were plenty of people. Actually, one of the most bullish dudes that I know in terms of Bitcoin, his name is escaping me right now. He's my next door neighbor. Incredibly, we moved into this new house. After living there for 2 or 3 years, we moved into this other house, and we said hi to our neighbors. We're like, hey, good to meet you guys, and we'd see them, but just they're younger, and I think he worked at least partially online. And so we would see each other in passing. We'd be bringing in groceries. We'd say hi to each other. And then we wrote Thank God for Bitcoin. It gets published. I got my first copies shipped to Uruguay, and I got them. And so one day we're talking, and he was into Bitcoin. And I'm like, what are the odds in this city where like almost nobody knows about Bitcoin, that my next door neighbor is into Bitcoin, knows like a lot of the same people, and just listen to a bunch of things. He had actually taken out a loan for, I believe it was like $50K when Bitcoin was around, I want to say it was under the all-time high. I don't know. I don't remember how far, but like he took out a loan for $50K and bought Bitcoin with it. And I just remember thinking,
impressive.
Exactly, the conviction. This is not investing advice, but just in terms of it just impressed me. So yeah. So I mean, there were people who were using it. He knew people who were mining Bitcoin, but again, the reality is, I mean, just the purchasing power of international currencies gets absolutely decimated far more quickly than the dollar does. And so it's far more of an urgent problem than Americans feel. So I just remember, like, from the time that we arrived in Uruguay, when we arrived in 2015, the Uruguayan peso to dollar ratio was 1-24. And by the time we left, it had gotten as high as 45 or 46. And now it's back down to like 44. So it's just one of these things where, I mean, again, just the reality, by the time we left, if you hadn't gotten 100% raise effectively, then you're getting absolutely decimated. And so I think that's a big thing that maybe Americans don't appreciate. to the same degree. Is just like this thing happens because there's so much less demand for these international currencies. You know, when things start going downhill, they go downhill a lot faster.
It's wild that practically Bitcoin solves international remittances.
Mm-hmm.
And we know this because PayPal just said they're going to give people a 90% reduction in their international fees if they use crypto and Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Wild. It's one of those things that we're seeing it practically in businesses. Practically Bitcoin fixes remittances.
Yeah.
Because it just makes the amount of money a company needs to spend to actually settle cross border nothing. And so they're just, you know, like, oh, cool, I can charge you 10% and still make money.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cut your price by 90%.
They're effectively making 9%, you know, off of every trade just by doing that. And so, yeah, again, it's actually better than 30% or whatever with Western Union
or 300%.
Got a fun story with that. Actually, I lived in South Korea, and during that time, and we were in like the mountains, like the countryside, the mountains of South Korea, and we were teaching English, and we had debt in America, so we had to send back money to America every month. Classic remittance situation, right? There are two options, basically. The standard option, which was you get on your like moped, scooter, you drive into town, takes 30 minutes to get into town, you wait in line at the bank for an hour because you can only do this on the weekends and everyone's doing the banking on the weekends. You fill out all this paperwork to do an international transfer, which is to say you get the bank to approve, I'm going to send $1,000 home, right? And it costs you $50 plus all the time, which is something like 3 hours total, right?
Yeah.
And then you go home and you have to do it every month over and over and over again. It was like, I did it like once or twice and I was like, this is so painful. It's such a waste of time. It's like a complete waste of your Saturday to do this. But that was like this is like, oh, you show up. This is part of the training of how you be a teacher. Like everyone has to do this. Every teacher in Korea has to do this. And you just go through the process. That's what you do. When I was there, it took me I was like, nope, I'm not doing that because I know Bitcoin exists and I know how to use it. And so at that point they had Corbit, which is a Korean exchange. And I just like signed up for a Corbit account. I don't know if you can do this anymore because they put in all these regulations with regard to foreign nationals and or expats in Korea, et cetera, but like at that point, none of that stuff was there. So I was like, great, signed up for a Corbit account, transfer money, sent it to Coinbase, which was connected to my bank account in America. And so the whole process was just, oh yeah, it's one transfer. And then it's like 10 minutes, 45 minutes later, you're like, good to go. The cost difference was the difference between $50 versus $1.50, right?
So what was so what was the path to actually getting your money though? Like, were there local places where you could exchange Bitcoin for local currency, or like how did you actually, or were you, I mean, I don't think you were using Bitcoin.
No, I was using Bitcoin for remittance, right?
Sure.
So like you get paid in Korea, I'd get paid direct deposit to my bank account
in the US,
a Korean bank account in Korea. Yes. And then I connected that Korean bank account to my Corbit account, Bitcoin exchange in Korea. And then from Corbit sent the money to Coinbase in America.
Yeah.
So, from Coinbase, then it went to my bank account in America. Yeah. And was able to, connect to the rest of the financial system in America. Okay. So there's no like, Korea is like way more advanced than America is in terms of all their technology and infrastructure and everything else, which is inclusive of their banking. Like they have cash, but it's like mostly cashless. So
so then you were using your US debit card or something like that in Korea. Is that kind of what you're? That's
no.
Saying?
Like
or no.
There was like, it's a completely separate banking system. So like when we got off a plane, like we had to go get a Korean debit card, and Korean bank account and Korean like infrastructure around like Korean SIM card, like the whole thing, right?
Sure.
You are now connected to the Korean infrastructure and all that stuff.
So why were you wanting to send dollars back to the US? That's what I'm trying to nail down.
Because we had debt So
got you. Okay,
American
just for other
debt,
expenses,
like, right?
Got you.
Like, yeah,
okay.
like student debt. Like, how are we gonna pay this $1,000
100%.
bill in America when we're in Korea? Right?
Correct. Got you. That totally makes sense.
The whole thing. Yeah,
you should have just done the responsible thing and ignored it. That's what every should be, is just ignored completely.
Yeah, I have a buddy who basically the IRS owed him a bunch of money. They still owe him a bunch of money, but they accidentally sent him another chunk of money. And so what he did, I'm not advocating this, he turned around and just bought Bitcoin with all this money. He's like, listen, they already owe me money anyhow. He's like, so basically I'm just going to buy Bitcoin with it and hold it. And it's already up like a bunch of money. So again, he's taking the risk. Like if it goes down, he has to pay for it. He's got money to pay for it, but like, it wasn't like he's like living or dying on this. But again, he's like, the government is super inefficient. It would, it would affect me in a real, negative way. And so, I'm just doing this. So
again,
it doesn't.
Not financial advice, but I've heard the exact same story, like on Twitter. Some of the guys on Twitter are like, yeah, I had, my tax bill last year, let's say it's a $10,000 tax bill. But I'm not going to pay that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take $10,000. I'm going to invest in Bitcoin. I'm just going to pay, like I'm going to do a payment plan with the IRS, because you can do that kind of stuff. And I, talk to your tax attorney, blah, blah, blah. But like, apparently you can just do something like that where the financing for that is 5% or something, right? I don't know what it is, but it's probably less than Bitcoin's CAGR. And so then you're just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to pay this off for never. I don't care. It doesn't matter, because the money is, instead of paying taxes, I'm just invested in Bitcoin. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And this is where, again, like none of these things, like this is where, like, it's just like you get into the crazy late stage fiat type thing where everything's upside down. Nothing makes sense. And so you just have people who are just trying to figure out how to navigate the absurdity of the collapse of the system. And I mean, just things that were like, you just like, who does this serve actually? Like, this actually doesn't serve anybody except for like middlemen who are just skimming money. Like this, like, what are we even talking about here?
It's wild, the practical things that Bitcoin solves in terms of like cutting out middlemen. The first time I learned about Bitcoin, I was standing in Miami when it actually clicked, and I was watching Jack Mallers on stage, and I have a sibling who is in banking, and they've been in banking for 15 years. The second I got it, I texted them and I was like, hey, you should probably find a brand new job. This was like 3 years ago. And they just kind of laughed at me. And I was like, I'm literally giving you a 10-year head start on everybody in your industry who's going to be jobless here soon. And we're already seeing it. I saw the other day, like a lot of insurance companies are starting to use AI to just cut out people as much as they can, cut out as many middlemen. It's happening all over film, as we've seen. I'm sure it's happening in nonprofits. It's happening in government, and it's only a matter of time before it comes absolutely for everyone, not just AI, but Bitcoin. Because at the end of the day, if a computer can solve your problem practically, efficiently, and quickly, you're going to do it. And that's exactly what we saw at PayPal this last week, where they're just doing the crypto payments. But it's like banks are going to do it too. We just saw Citibank, I think, the other day being like, we're going to now recommend this. And like the only holdout is going to be Vanguard. It's going to be 2140, and Vanguard still is not going to let you buy Bitcoin.
No, they're going to be buying Bitcoin. They also are one of the largest shareholders in MicroStrategy, so they're flaming hypocrites. Like it's classic. I believe they're actually the largest shareholder in MicroStrategy, like other than maybe Sailor and stuff like that.
All right, we got Anton.
Whoa, let's
Anton in the house. How's it going,
What's
man?
up, y'all?
Dude, you have always the sexiest voice in the world. I'm just like, golly, man. I need like 3 octaves lower.
We should always do this early in the morning.
In a world,
Duff Man says a lot of things.
And do you have any, interesting, good, like practical, and I know I'm putting you on the spot right as you jump in, but, practical ways that Bitcoin has helped you? And I'm actually curious too, because I know you've traveled a lot. But like, are there any instances where it's like Bitcoin has actually like practically helped solve a problem for you, or made something worse? There's probably both sides of that.
Well, for me, the biggest thing Bitcoin has been is just a savings technology. So, nothing that exciting, other than just allowed me to essentially own little fractions of an asset. Whereas, I'd wanted to buy rental properties back in the day, and I just didn't have the down payment for a rental property. And Bitcoin has essentially served that same function for me, more or less.
The one thing that's coming to mind as you say that, just the practicality of Bitcoin being a savings technology is you can actually go back and look, like, what were my monthly expenses? Like, anybody can do this. What were my monthly expenses last month? What were my monthly expenses before that? Go back for like the last year, get 12 months of data, and then like go reprice that data in Bitcoin for that month. And you just go back and do the math on it, and you'll see, like, over the long haul, some months you're going to be up in Bitcoin terms, some or more expensive in Bitcoin terms, some months are less expensive in Bitcoin terms. But over the long haul, you'll see that your expenses in Bitcoin terms, if you're denominating in Bitcoin, your expenses will be cheaper every month just by denominating in Bitcoin on average, which is to say, it's savings technology that allows you to save, that allows you to beat inflation constantly, regularly, with certainty, because of its finite nature and the rest of it. This is a practical, rubber hits the road reality of Bitcoin.
For me, one other thing, practically, Bitcoin has been the best filter for new friends I've ever experienced. Like, seriously, it's such a shorthand of finding an actual Bitcoiner. Like, Orange Pill app is actually cool. Like, shout out to those guys over there. I think Mateo and Brian are doing some good stuff over there. I know there's a lot of thoughts around, is it a honeypot or whatever it is? I don't think it is. I like those guys, but practically, Bitcoin has been the fastest shortcut for me to find people I can actually talk with and not get into a screaming match of stupid. Because if you're on the same page of Bitcoin, you have this base layer of understanding of, hey, we want to make the world better for everyone. You can talk about anything. Like, I've had conversations with people who are wildly left and wildly right. It doesn't really matter, because we can talk about anything and everything, because, again, we have this foundational understanding of, like, hey, if we fix the problem, which is the incentive structure, everything gets fixed. And so whether you have this belief and I have this belief, we'll actually come to the truth, which is probably somewhere in the middle of what we're actually talking about, very, very quickly once the money's fixed. But the problem is we're operating in this world of stupid that won't be fixed until we fix incentives.
And the cool thing too is, like, in addition, there are some things where, like, the third way is the way. The other thing is, like, there's some cases, I've seen many cases where just people become radically different people by virtue of getting into Bitcoin. They just radically change positions on deeply held, long held positions, just because, the shift in, like, what money is. Like, once you see that, then all of a sudden that's like this. It's like going to the chiropractor, and it just, like, brings all these other things into alignment that, previously, you didn't see the importance, or you didn't see how they connected. And then once you fix this one, it really does humble you. Just when you just think about the fact that, I just do this all the time, is you're like, okay, the reason I believe this, and the reason I did this is because I believed this. And as soon as that belief changed, then all of a sudden now I'm like, oh, and now I understand, like, how you could get there. I see how you could, like, reverse engineer thinking that if you believed this thing. And so, like, some of this is, like, it really does, by having these more foundational questions, I think you're able to accomplish a lot more. You're able to to have more productive conversations, because you realize it's not just, it's really easy to stay at surface level and be like, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. And it's like, really, it's much more profitable to get underneath that and be like, well, why do you believe what you believe? And so if you believe that, for instance, money is just the positivistic creation of the state, like, value is created by the state, well, then, yeah, sure, you're going to want a government that, just does everything and that creates money out of thin air and does all these things. If you don't believe that, well, then you're not going to want that kind of money. You're going to see that as illegitimate. And so I think that, again, we in the name of pragmatism and in the name of really just not arguing, and in the name of just really just being able to make money. Like that's really what a lot of this comes down to. Why don't businesses want to talk about politics in the workplace, or why? Because they literally just want you to focus on making them money. Like they don't actually care about you. They just want you to focus. They just shut up, make us money. Like that's really what's going on. And so I think that having conversations about, more fundamental questions is both healthy for people and in the long term good for everybody, society more broadly, business more broadly. It's a question of time preference.
One of the things that comes to mind while you're saying that is the idea that practically Bitcoin fixes your commitments and ties to work. A lot of times we have a job, we have all of our like eggs in one basket, and that basket is our job, which is to say, if you mess up on the job next month, potentially you don't have a house, right? Like if your employer has unbelievable weight over your situation, and there's basically almost nothing you can do about it. Like practically they own you. Practically they are, especially if you have debts to pay or whatever else, like they are literally the person or the entity that controls your life, right? So practically you enter, and Bitcoin enters a situation, and like there's, oh man, just with the inflation, you're in salary and everything else, like you are constantly on this like downward slope, even with your employer. So not only does your employer own you, like own your life, and if you make a mistake at work, like, well, you might not have a house next month. They also are paying you in fiat. So they are also like, you're losing value in fiat practically every day that USD inflates. So you're becoming more and more of a slave to them, right? You can feel this pressure every time the yearly cost of living increase comes around. Like, it's not enough. It's kind of like a slap in the face, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so practically Bitcoin solves this by giving you savings, by giving you an exit path, where it says it releases a little bit of that pressure, a little bit more over time, right? And that gives you the ability to say, yeah, sorry, but this is unethical. What we're doing, what you are asking me to do at this job is unethical, right? You can't say that this is unethical if next month you're going to be homeless. I mean, some people can do that, but it's very hard to do that if you've got kids and debts and all the rest of it, right? It's just going to be, you're essentially bought and paid for ideologically by your job, unless you have an exit strategy, unless you are able to save, and Bitcoin allows you to do that.
I remember I had a little bit of money to invest, and I didn't know anything about investing. And I went around and I asked all these people, how does finance work? How do stocks work? How does real estate investing work? And pretty much nobody could explain it to me in a way that it really made logical sense. Like the closest one that made logical sense was, okay, if you get a rental property, you want this thing called cash flow. You want to get a mortgage and then have someone else pay more than your mortgage payment, so you make money off that person. I was like, okay, that makes sense, but how am I actually providing value to that person? And so that part of being a landlord didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because I wasn't actually providing value. I'm like, why don't they just go and get a mortgage, and then they're going to pay less than I'm charging as I continuously increase rent? So it didn't make logical sense to me. With Bitcoin, I had to go to Bitcoiners and ask them about Bitcoin. Have you guys ever gotten in one of these arguments where you start just trying to win the argument just for your own pride's sake? Well,
never one time. Emerson, tell us more.
Never. I've never experienced this phenomenon. Please elaborate.
Bitcoin was super humbling to me, because I had nothing to gain in arguing anything. I was more like, okay, you clearly understand this better than I do. Please help educate me on this thing. And in that sense, there was such more purity with Bitcoiners. It was like they weren't trying to prove anything to me. Neither party had anything to win. It's just like, yeah, if you want to know about this, if I know more than you, I will just help educate you on this thing. And I find that Bitcoiners have a much more humbled attitude, because it's like in the regular finance world, it is sort of a zero-sum game. Like, that's what trading is. You're trying to essentially sell somebody something for more than you paid for it and constantly play hot potato.
Yeah.
There is none of that in Bitcoin.
Yeah. And there is some of that. Like, there are people, especially like the exchanges and stuff like that. But in terms of like the people, like the vast majority of people, I mean, the vast majority of coins haven't moved in over a year. Like, there's like something like, I think it's down to like 55%, but still, like, that's a ton of coins that aren't moving, it's not just people hopping in and out. People, there are a lot of ideologically convicted psychos who are just like, hey, I never want to sell this. Not because I don't ever want to spend it, but because I'm not like, this is long-term savings. This is money that I don't want to ever bring back into this, into the fiat system. And so I think that, there are just a lot of people who really do see the problems here. Now, again, they will sell if they have to. Like, they're not insane. Like, if something, like, I was just reading this thing, I should find this link. But it was a guy who sold 300 Bitcoin. I don't know when it was. It sounds like it was a while, like a number of years ago. But his daughter needed an open heart surgery, and so he sold 300 Bitcoin to pay for the open heart surgery. And he's like, I would do it again. But he's actually running. It's a geyser campaign right now that's running, where he's like basically trying to raise money. I can't remember what it was for this time. But yeah, I mean, just that reality, like there things are going to come up where people are going to have to sell their Bitcoin, and thereby like demonstrate that there's something that they love and want more than the gain that they can make from Bitcoin. So I think that's a good and natural thing. But again, I do think that for a lot of people, when you see that you're being scammed, you want other people to see that they're being scammed too. And I think it's easy for the zeal that Bitcoiners have to get mistaken for, you're really just trying to pump your own bags. You really just care about yourself and you getting more wealthy. And that's why you want me to buy a coin. And it's just like, no, that's actually not it. You're just getting stolen from. Your purchasing power is getting, deleted to zero. And I don't want to see that happen to you. And, but yeah, I just think I really have seen it over and over again. Same thing that you're describing, Anton.
Yeah, that's something that for the tens of thousands of what you could call altcoins, you see people who they do want you to jump in because they want to jump out. They're desperate to jump out. They're like, please pump the price up on this garbage so that I can get out of it. Whereas with Bitcoin, people realize that it is the only thing worthy of being called a cryptocurrency, and people aren't trying to get rid of it. They're trying to accumulate more of it. And so they're like, yeah, hop on in. Psychologically, it feels better as the price is going up. But for the most part, people aren't just trying to get rid of it. It's like people see a long-term value in it. They have no idea how long of a long-term value. And yeah, they will sell it when they need it, but they're not just trying to desperately get out of it. So it's a completely different mindset between even people holding stocks and things like that and people holding Bitcoin.
And the Bitcoin markets themselves are so deep now. Like with altcoins, it's like, I mean, do the math on it, of course, but like it can take, like, if you have $100,000, and this is a thing that happened in the early days. There's actually I don't know, this is like super OG Bitcoiner thing. There was God.pdf. Have you ever heard of God.pdf? So I've heard of God too. I think I could be mistaken on that. But so it was basically a legacy trader was getting familiar with the market depth of the altcoin market in super early days, like 2013 or 14, something like that, right? and they're looking at Dogecoin and all the other early, super early forks, or altcoins or shitcoins. And they're basically coming to the conclusion that the markets are so thin that they can essentially set the price, because they've got deep pockets. So they can just set the price to here and then like manipulate it down to here and like get the social media going. Okay. And bring it up, like pump it up again. And like they just walked through the entire process. This God.pdf walked through the entire psychological process that a legacy trader would go through if he knew he could manipulate the market. And that's exactly what happens in all the altcoin things. And you've just seen it played over and over and over and over again, which was you could just control whatever the narrative, whatever the currency is, because you just have 10 times more money than the rest of the people who are getting scammed.
Yeah.
Now, with Bitcoin, the markets are so deep and so robust that you cannot do that anymore. I mean, you probably couldn't do it back in the day with regard to that. But today, it's impossible to do that. Like we saw just the last week, what was it? 80,000 Bitcoin, 70,000 Bitcoin were sold at market, and the price tanked a couple $1,000s and is now right back up to where it was before. Like it's a completely different ballgame. There's no such thing as altcoins. It's totally a scam.
I think
I've
that
been
actually
having these conversations about Ripple recently.
Oh my God.
That thing, there are, I don't even know what the number is. It's like tens of billions of Ripple, and most of them are held by a select group of people.
Yeah.
It's like a complete scam.
Didn't he drop like 200 million or something like that?
Yeah, Chris
Like,
Larson, Permaseller, Garlinghouse is another one. He's made, I think, 9 figures in Bitcoin 9 figures by selling Ripple this year.
Gargling House.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's it's funny. No, what's interesting about all that stuff though is getting into getting into altcoins. Like when I first got in, I was a NFT degen. But judge me.
That story.
I earned it.
Oh man,
I earned it.
Yep.
But the thing is, altcoins and NFTs and all the scam coins and increase your time preference. Altcoins make you crazy because you're pumping and dumping. You're trying to actually get somebody else in the door before you get out the door on the backside, so you can actually like keep your money, then like run the scam again. It's a traditional real Ponzi. Bitcoin, on the other hand, like lowers your time preference. The number of times I'm standing at a Starbucks or I'm standing somewhere with somebody else and it's like, I'll just take water. Like, I don't really want the coffee right now. I'd rather have $5 more of this increasing asset than something else. Like, there are things that I've gotten home, and I'm like, I don't really need this. I'm just going to return it. Like, because even then, the practical application of that is like, do I need this in the next 30 days is the next thing. It's like, oh, I don't need this right now. Like, sure, I'm going to do a trip a month from now, but I don't really need this. Like, I would rather actually have the 30 days of appreciation on Bitcoin, because we've talked about this Bondora offline. It's like Bitcoin makes its gains in like 6 days a year, right? Like the majority of the gains that are coming to that. It's like you don't know when you're going to be in that 6-day window. I think institutions are going to level it out. I hope not as much as it seems. Maybe the path to max pain, I'm changing from my previous podcast of like, is just crabbing to the right forever. That would actually probably be max pain. But I really do think the most unique aspect of Bitcoin is it focuses your time preference of responsibility on the future. You're not just focused on how do I spend this paycheck before it's evaporated away because I go to the meat store and steaks are $25 instead of 10 like they were last week. So it's a really different way of thinking, and it's the way you should be thinking. Like, the reason we don't have cathedrals anymore, the reason we don't have beautiful buildings, the reason we don't have a functioning government or any politicians with 2 brain cells to rub together is because the money's broken.
And I would say, it is because of just the focus on short-term action. So like politicians, this is a famous thing, but like politicians, they spend 50% of their time on the phone trying to raise money to stay in power. Now, again, you're like, well, yes, that's actually might be a good thing, because if they had 50% more time to do degenerate things and pass degenerate legislation, like maybe that actually is a preferable alternative. But it's still, you have like a lot of action. Like these guys, they want to do important things. They want to make actions that make people think that they're important so that they vote them back in. And that is just not a very good incentive structure, all things considered. Like it's, and this is why I'm somebody who, I mean, again, obviously you don't want to ever like, idealize any political situation. But like, again, the idea of like, we're at a point where the vast majority of people would see a king reigning as like the most unthinkable, like totally backwards thing. And meanwhile, I'm just like looking at this thing like, yeah, you know what? Actually, like it's a lot more efficient. There's, obviously it can go wrong, but like if you have a bunch of people who are just recognizing like, hey, you know what? Like there is actually, regardless of, if it's not stated officially in terms of voting or whatever, people always have power. Like they really do always have power. And so like, there's just, I just think, and really realistically, there's not much. I mean, still, if you look at today, like the effect, like what are most people doing with their political freedom? Like, what are they actually, are they actually using it in a way that is like discernibly a benefit to society? I don't think so. Like you're talking, I don't know what percentage of people actually vote. Like only like, I want to say it's like 50 or 60% of people actually vote. So you've got 40% of people. Then I just think at the point where really, like, I think that, and you see this in El Salvador. And again, we can debate about, I know I guess there's like 100 journalists and activists who like fled El Salvador in the last few days here because apparently, I don't know. Alex Gladstein is saying that Bukele's people are thieves and they're corrupt and this was getting exposed. And so these people were fleeing. So again, I'm not trying to idealize it and basically say, look, all you have to do is put a king in there. But I just don't think it's as straightforward as American education would have you believe, where it's like, listen, we just put in a democracy and everything gets better. It's like, show me that throughout history. I don't see that anywhere, but sure.
You must have been homeschooled.
Yeah, he's definitely homeschooled.
Public school definitely taught me that the government will solve all of my problems.
Yep.
Nobody sitting here is going to be like, what? No.
Yeah.
Democracy.
Yeah.
For all 24 people watching are just like, what?
Yeah.
Part
like
of
just
it, like,
go ahead.
Part of the problem you're describing here is that, like, one, the public education teaches us, oh yeah, well, you can do XYZ thing, but like two, the reflexive nature of a democracy. Oh, it's good because you can vote and then change the thing that you think it, and like, oh, if it's bad, well then vote or whatever. And we're basically sitting in this soup of civilization, if you will, like hardly a building, mostly a soup. And it's like people are stuck at a job trying to make practically people are stuck at a job trying to make ends meet. And the only valve, the only like pressure gauge that they really have or think that they have is to vote in your democracy. Right. And it comes out like, oh, just vote for this or vote for, oh yeah, everything's terrible in California. That's because of the Democrats. And therefore to fix California, we have to elect Republicans. And like everyone just buys into that. It's like, why do they buy into that? Well, they buy into it because they don't have any time to actually research it. They buy into it because their time preferences are so high, they literally can't look back a month, 6 months, 4 years previous to the previous administration's absolute destruction that they caused on the other side of the political spectrum. And then it just goes in circles and circles and circles, and nothing ever gets fixed and no problems are ever actually solved.
I think one of the other things that's interesting about like the practical applications of Bitcoin in that regard, like the lowering of time preferences for a society, I think will be a shock to most people. Like, especially when we get into an AI world where, I feel we're going to learn the Europeans had it right. Or it's like passeggiata in Italy, where people just kind of like take a walk in the afternoon and they kind of like slow down life. I think we're so conditioned to microwave everything. We microwave solutions, vote harder. We microwave like problems. Oh, we're going to build this building with like, we're going to 3D print a building with concrete. Okay, cool. You can do that. Sure. We just built a skyscraper in China in 3 minutes. But is it pretty? Is it beautiful? Like, is it something that people actually like put a lot of thought and effort into every inch of? No, not at all. And I think that's one of the things that we're losing with the current, just like really like high time preference living. And Bitcoin will practically solve that as it continues to become the bedrock of the financial institution. I think even the finance people are going to have to like change a little bit of the way that they think. I think Bitcoin settling every 10 minutes is going to kind of keep them in this like, oh, hey, I can do this and be a little bit frenetic. But I think in the long term, when finance companies continue to realize, hey, I can just hold on to this asset and make an additional $1 billion by doing nothing, they're gonna look at that, and then nations are gonna look at that, and then just practically, it's going to be the biggest kind of like tsunami of understanding that sometimes doing nothing is actually the best way to live. And so I think that's going to be a really cool thing to see. I just don't know how long it's going to take to get there.
Bondor tweeted something yesterday that kind of blew my mind about nonprofits. That it was specifically in regards to the LA. There was this concert held for victims of LA fires, and all of the money that was raised essentially went to the nonprofits, and none of it went to anybody who lost a home in the fires. And he was saying most nonprofits, most of the money they take in go to just operating the nonprofit. And Bondor, you brought up that if all of the money had been transacted in Bitcoin, you would be able to follow and see exactly where it went. So you could see if all of it went into an individual's wallet, or if it went to the company, if it went to the company, what operations it paid for. So that's going to be a really interesting development as people start to transact more and more in Bitcoin. You can completely hold a government accountable. If they charge you taxes, you can watch and see exactly where those taxes go.
There's actually going to be a competitive landscape. One nonprofit accepts only Bitcoin and publishes their address. Hey, we're a nonprofit. Like we want to be above board. We want to be transparent. We want you to, we want to be able to show you that the money you give us goes and exactly where it goes, right? The nonprofit that does that is going to be light years ahead of the nonprofit who's just like opaque legacy banking, just black box. Oh yeah, give it to us. We'll take care of it. Yeah. We'll fix the homeless problem. Versus, you can see when you give us money, this is where it goes. You can see how it's funneled. You can see our accounts. You can see all our salaries, the rest of it, because we're not trying to make money, guys. We're out here literally trying to solve the problem, and you can actually trace the money flow.
Yeah. And there's some really cool precedent for this in a couple different ways. So Charity Water is a charity that basically dig wells all over the world and try to provide clean water. And one of the things that they their founder was lived for a time as a party promoter in New York City. Young guy, worked in, he was probably, I think when he first started, he was 18, just moved to New York City, partying, strip clubs, working, all these things, just getting to know people, became friends with a whole bunch of models and actors and all kinds of people. And then ended up just having a crisis of faith, and just realized after 3 days of partying, he's like, man, if I were to die right now, he's like, I will have only served myself for my entire adult life. And so he just basically started looking for a place to go and serve. He hopped on a mercy ship, saw the need for, which is, and mercy ships are these things where you can work for them for a period of time. You literally drive around on a boat, and they pull into ports in poor countries and basically start doing free medical service for people. And so he just got to the point where he's like, hey, clean water is a real need. So as he was, trying to set up this nonprofit to provide clean water, he just knew that with a lot of the people that he was talking to, trust of institutions was very low. And there was a lot of suspicion about giving money to an institution because of the question of where is this money actually going to go? Does this actually really impact people? And so he was trying to figure out how do we structure this nonprofit so that we can say that all of the money that comes in goes right back out to water projects. And so what he decided to do is he presented this problem to people who were in Silicon Valley. And these are people who understand that like you need structure, you need back end resources and processes and money to fund all these things. And so what he did was he basically found a group of tech founders who were willing to pay their operational cost. Like they would donate the money specifically for their operation cost. And then every dollar that comes in the door to fund basically that, for people trying to fund water projects is going right back out the door to fund water projects. So I do think for many things, Bitcoin will provide the same sort of flexibility and the same sort of transparency. Like there's a way to do that. At the same time, there will need to be some clandestinality, if that's a word, like to some things that certain nonprofits are doing. There are nonprofits that are working to move resources and different things into places like North Korea or places in the Middle East and other places where it is illegal to do whatever the thing that this nonprofit is doing, even though it's totally above board, whether it's humanitarian services, whether it's whatever it is. And so there will be the need for some lack of, you could call it lack of transparency. But again, this is something that even Bitcoin does enable with things like the Lightning Network and things, like other third layers where you can use Bitcoin, but not in a way that's able to be tracked on the blockchain. So I do think that there's a place for more transparency. I do think it would be a benefit, and I do think there's opportunity. And so the people who are going to be starting Bitcoin denominated nonprofits and running them have a tremendous, even just marketing opportunity to kind of talk about this from that perspective.
That's a beauty of Bitcoin, that there's both.
Yep.
There's transparency, or you can have it not be transparent. You can choose.
Yep.
It's interesting. I'm doing a side conversation with AI right now just to try and figure out like the philanthropic benefits that are actually getting to the people that they're trying to help. And the fascinating piece about this is like even the AI is like, oh, I don't know, like once you get past the first layer in the veil, you have no idea, because it goes from box A where they're like, oh, 80% of box A is going into a good charitable box. Oh, by the way, it's just going to another box that box is also 80%. And it's like just these boxes of the shell game, and the shell game is just constantly moving the money further and further and further down the hole, where people are just taking more and more of a cut out of it all the way to where it just funnels into the pockets of politicians and other people. And even now it's like looking at the different like watchdog organizations. It's like, oh, hey, where do you actually get the money to fund your watchdog organization? Oh, from the people that were the watchdog of. It's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Speaking of Bear Stearns and all these other large organizations that are doing
Moody's,
the
funding,
Moody's and all these other S&P and whatnot, Standards and Poor. And so it's just, whenever the government says they're going to audit themselves, all you need to do is laugh. That's it, because they're not actually going to audit themselves. Like the only way to have a proper audit is to have a unbiased third party. You actually want a biased third party to come in. You want somebody who has a vested interest in actually rooting out the rot, because if you have an unbiased third party, they can be biased and they will be biased. And so I think that's one of the things with Bitcoin. Practically, Bitcoin solves all the problems we're talking about with the government, because if you can track the wallets all the way back to, hey, I made this donation to the government. By the way, my money went to the Pentagon, and I know that I just saw the money that I donated to the government or spent on my taxes go directly to bombing some kid somewhere in the world. I might not actually like that. And so this obfuscation of the dollars and how they're spent is one of the reasons we have such a poorly run government, because they can hide behind things. And so I think that's the thing that's, going to be solved by Bitcoin, and just the move towards cryptocurrencies is we're going to have a lot more efficiency. But that's actually why you need to use Bitcoin, because at the end of the day, they're going to use Monero, or they're going to use any of these other cryptos that are actually just scams. And then they know that they can hide behind the scam, because the biggest scam is the US dollar.
So all of this, the point, like the transparency point is like super valid. Obviously, you want to have, as Jordan notes, you want to have some like obfuscation in particular situations, but there's another side to it as well, which is, you can think of it almost like the opposite side, which is when you donate to a nonprofit, you want to be sure that they can actually execute on the intended purpose, right?
Yeah.
For instance, the truckers in Canada.
Bingo.
If you're donating to the truckers in Canada via a bank account, and the government, who they're protesting, can shut down their bank accounts, you're not donating any money to the truckers, you're donating money to the government, right?
Yeah.
Or to the banks or whoever else is confiscating the end result there, right? So you need something that is both transparent and obfuscatable and permissionless. You can't shut it down, which is Bitcoin. That's this is the whole, like, right? Like, Bitcoin solves this problem. Bitcoin practically brings permissionlessness to a nonprofit or a cause or an organization that allows them to operate independently without risk of being debanked or shut down.
Yeah, I do think, again, beyond that, there are some other things that, so, I mean, the fact that an increasing percentage of donations to nonprofits denominated in fiat are going towards operations, that shouldn't surprise anybody, because that's like fiat's fault. I mean, that's like, there comes a point at which, yeah, okay, this is just what happens. Everything goes up in price denominated in fiat. And so then it also shouldn't surprise us. I was texting back and forth. JD sent me the tweet that you sent, and I was like, well, I was like, the part of this is fiat's problem. Part of this is California's problem, because if you've got, if you've got nonprofits specifically related to the fire money, it's like, if you've got nonprofits that are operating in California, they're going to have much higher operating budgets because their salaries are going to need to be higher to be able to pay insane California real estate prices. And so, like, this, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see like a nonprofit exodus from California. Whether it's, and some of this might already be happening, and that's just making it worse. So if you've got the nonprofit that's based in Wyoming or whatever, like that's just a way to make even more money. But definitely, if your nonprofit organization is founded in California, you're going to still, if you're trying to pay Californians, you're gonna need to pay them a lot more than somebody who's living in Iowa or something like that. So again, this is my argument. I was like, see, listen, so part of this is we just need to adopt Bitcoin. The other part is we just need to abandon California. So
as he says this to two people who are actively in California,
that's the joke. Yeah.
but again, that problem is solved by Bitcoin. Practically, Bitcoin reduces real estate prices because it takes out monetary premium on real estate. So
absolutely.
And Anton, and both Anton and I have been following real estate in LA and California for a long time. Just, it's part of what you have to do to live here, right? And I'm already seeing it over the last 6 months. Prices in real estate are coming down. Now, is that because of Bitcoin? It's probably because the interest rates are really high. But when you price it all in Bitcoin, it's coming down even more, right?
Yep. Just
from the last 6 months of Bitcoin bull run. If you're saving in Bitcoin, if you're denominating in Bitcoin, real estate is just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And practically, that's a huge thing, because everyone's like, well, I need a place to live. Everybody needs a place to live.
Yep.
Like in California, every other person is homeless. Well, gosh, like you see these, wow, this is connecting some dots on some practical solutions to things.
I've been seeing something slightly different than that. Whereas real estate has been falling in price in nominal terms for some properties, it's been going up for other properties. And what I believe is happening, and this could be happening as a result of Bitcoin, properties, if they are truly valuable, remain valuable. But it's revealing which properties aren't as valuable. So you'll have
speculative or something.
Yeah. Or you'll literally have a house that is on the freeway, and it had been used as essentially almost like an altcoin before. It's like a place to put your money, because real estate prices just go up forever in California. It's just like buy any piece of real estate. You can park a little bit of money for there and you will be able to sell it for more money a little bit down the road. That's how real estate has been treated here. It's why people will not give deals on real estate to friends or family or anything like that, because everybody's like, I have an absolute jackpot sitting here if I own this house. And as Bitcoin becomes more and more the standard and people realize that they can park their wealth in Bitcoin rather than having to speculate in all these different markets, it is going to reveal true value, which is exactly what is happening. And so we're going to see more and more and more of that, which is kind of cool.
Absolutely. One thing, we're getting to close to the end of the show. We still got maybe 5-10 minutes left, but I wanted to bring this up because this is a hugely practical thing that a lot of people struggle with regard to Bitcoin, which is you are working 4 jobs. You have, 80 hours a week. You have all these expenses. You have zero ability to save or invest, right? Practically, you think Bitcoin is not for me because there's nothing I can do. There's no amount of time or energy or money or any kind of possible resource that I can actually put into Bitcoin, even if it's like an hour a week of research. Like I cannot do this, right? So practically, how does Bitcoin solve this problem? Now, I've gotten into like a whole bunch of arguments with people about this online. I think this is the end result, and I've like gone down this path for a while. Okay, so here's the idea. The idea is that if you negotiate your salary, because you're getting paid, you've admitted you're getting paid, right? Like you have to meet your bills, you're getting paid. So if you renegotiate your salary into a flat rate in Bitcoin terms, a flat rate Bitcoin salary where you're not taking a pay cut or you're not asking for more money, you're just getting paid in Bitcoin at a flat rate, whatever your current salary is or your current income. That is how you get access to everything we're talking about. Because what's going to happen is that your salary is then going to be tied to Bitcoin and no longer tied to inflationary USD. What are the consequences there? Well, your salary is going to be more volatile. Okay, so you would ask in your negotiation for your salary, you would ask for a minimum exchange rate, right? Over like the next 6 months or a year or something. And you would also concede with your employer, as a negotiation tactic, as a part of asking for a salary in no longer a fiat salary, but a flat rate Bitcoin salary. You would concede to your employer that at the end of every year, we get to renegotiate my salary, bring it up to, or bring it down to where, what is the copacetic agreement about what my salary should be at the end of the year, right? But why does this matter? Why should you do this? This completely inverts the dynamic that we talked about earlier, where your employer owns you. This changes it from you now have the upper hand against your employer because your salary is going to beat inflation. Your salary is going to become a liability to them if they don't address it and renegotiate with you. Okay. So, practically, again, getting back to practically, does this actually work? So I ran the numbers on it. Here's a graph that basically on the top in the orange, this is a projected Monte Carlo simulation for Bitcoin's price using the meme 3 green, 1 red, which is to say Bitcoin on average goes up 3 years in a row and then crashes for 1 year. So up 20%, up 40%, up 60%, down 40%, right? So that's the orange going up is the projected Bitcoin price starting from today. And then the green line is your savings if you're getting paid in Bitcoin and your expenses are denominated in fiat. So as you can see, after about 2.5 years, there are no simulations where you are no longer broke, no longer without savings.
Mm.
And the reason that works is because you like the amount of money you're getting paid exceeds the inflation that your lifestyle will naturally engender and your just cost of living stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So like, this is a very practical thing. You can do this today. You don't even need to buy Bitcoin or invest or anything. Just renegotiate your salary and do a flat rate. Jordan, thoughts?
I like the idea. It's going to get, again, somebody's going to be a genius and get this like in writing, and they're going to hit it at like the perfect timing and absolutely make a killing, and their employer's head's going to explode when they realize like, oh shoot, what did we do?
Yeah.
And then at that point, I mean, it's just one of those things. At that point, it's like, well, can they just fire you? Like, if it gets to the point where you're literally making 3 times more than you were supposed to, like, are they just going to fire you and then they don't have to worry about it? Like, it's just one of these things where
that's exactly like, but again, you can write that in the contract. Hey, if it exceeds this amount, we have like that triggers a renegotiation process.
Sure.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but you can just plan for all of that stuff. And then the company's like, well, what's the, cost for us? Like, oh, maybe like if you're willing to set the minimum exchange rate
and it goes down, it could be
10. If you're willing to set that 10% below your current salary, well, the company's going to be like, well, wait a second, we might be able to save 10%. We're bearish on Bitcoin. We don't believe in this thing, whatever.
Yeah.
I want to save 10% on my employee salary.
Sure,
Absolutely.
sure.
Let's do it. And it's like, no, but that could catch up to them at the end of the year. And then they have to, but like you can kind of see like how this plays out. You're like, wait a second, this could actually solve a lot of the issues with regard to, I have zero savings. I have zero time. I have zero ability to pay attention to any of this stuff. You just go through it. You're like, whoa, interesting.
Yeah. I would be more dubious that even that would work, because again, even if it's, again, because the point is when it starts to disadvantage the company, like even if they're like, oh, look, we saved 10% and we can fire him when it gets to me, or like, it's just one of these things where I just feel like there's going to be a lot of cynical people. Like there might be some people in the beginning, depending on, really, it comes down to the character of your employer, right? Like, and it depends.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, the other thing, it's one thing if your employer is like cash rich and you have really good profit margins on your product. But like if you as a business, if you're working for somebody who's like margins are tighter, then like, I feel like there is a limit to the effectiveness of like some of this. I don't want to call it cute, but like some of this like system gaming, like there is a sense in which like this is going to take longer. It's going to be systemic. Again, like I think where it could work too is if you're working for like a big company, like if you have a lawyer and you're working for Apple or something like that, and you can you're a rounding error, like you can kind of disappear and go under the radar. I think some places like that it's going to work, but like I feel like your average place, even if unless you're capping it at something something like a 10% above or like a something like that, I feel like I don't think it's gonna work the way in practicality, the way that it would seem to be able to work on paper. But again, happy to be wrong. There's no hurt in having the conversation.
For sure. Here's one other thing that I think is fascinating and interesting about this idea, and I think you bring it up nicely, which is, wait a second, how much of your business model itself is predicated on just enslaving your employees at a fraction of their time, right?
Yep.
Because you're just, the company is literally just benefiting from the inflation because they don't have to pay as much for their salaries year after year, provided they don't offer the cost of living increase, which is commensurate with the actual inflation that their employee is experiencing, which no company does. They just say, oh, the inflation rate is whatever the interest rate is, right? Like, oh, that's going to be, and they can contractually, a lot of them will just contractually write that in a thing. But like, no, that's actually a bad business model.
Yeah.
That's saying that you're just going to cheat your way to your quote unquote profits. That's just total fiat mindset. That's not real. That's not a real actual business. You guys aren't actually making money. You're just arbitraging employment.
Or even if you are, like, you can still be like, even if you are making money and let's say the employer's keeping more of it, like, you know, he's got a couple of employees, he's making out like a king and he just doesn't want to share that with his employees. Well, again, if they're skilled, if it's skilled labor, then they're going to look elsewhere. And so you're going to have to, like, it's going to be a higher cost to, you know, hire somebody else, and, you know, just the efficiency, it's going to go down. So like there really are real incentives towards taking care of your employees and acting ethically. But yeah, it really is fascinating when you start thinking about, again, all the game theory. It's like you can choose your actions, you can't choose your consequences. And the more that you know, the more that you try to shortcut and try to not treat your employees effectively, you know, there's costs to doing that. So.
And as employees, as in particular skilled workers, come to understand Bitcoin as everyone is on the path to doing,
yeah,
they're going to be like, wait a second, it's unethical. I mean, my last gig was like, you guys, this is your inflation rate, which was nominally 2%, but was obviously like 8% or something. It was like, you know, I wrote letters to the company. You guys, I know what's happening.
Yeah.
I know that you are not meeting the cost of living appropriately.
Yep.
It's a disgusting practice. Honestly, it's unethical.
Yep.
Consequently, what are you going to do about it? No response. Naturally.
Yep.
Right.
And this is, I do think Bitcoin like has a radically, it has the ability to radically shift things like this for wealthy people. So like one of the examples, I've got a buddy who runs a nonprofit who is denominating things in Bitcoin. And like one of the things that they've started to look at is, you know, like 10% raises. Like if we hold a big enough percentage of our balance sheet in Bitcoin, like then we can do that happily and easily. Like that's not a big deal. Again, if you start with a big enough treasury, you know, that you do these kind of things, like you can actually take care of your people and it not affect your bottom line. And so what this incentivizes is, again, it incentivizes moving towards sound money as fast as you can. The people who move, the faster you move, the easier it is and the better that you're going to be able to treat, you know, your customers, your employees, all these kind of things. And so again, I just think that, and again, you could get to the point where if you get at the tail end of this thing, you start seeing runaway hyperinflation. Well, that's okay. Well, we have enough Bitcoin that's increased in value enough that we can do 20% raises. You know, we can actually keep pace with even hyperinflation because of how because of how Bitcoin works. And because of just the way reality works and scarcity works. And so again, I think the more that all of these nonprofit organizations, in addition to all the businesses, like obviously on a business end, but on the nonprofit end, like they are, you know, even more incentivized to start plugging the holes in their leaky bucket, you know, as soon as possible.
It's important to note that people can do this for themselves now.
Yeah.
They don't have to wait to get paid in Bitcoin. You can take your salary and you can convert it to Bitcoin now.
Yep.
So in the future, we will have sound money. Bitcoin is the future. But do you ever think about the 1920s era in America and you just can't even believe that it ever existed? There were actual coinage that had precious metals in them. The money was more or less sound during that time period. And what did we get? We got Art Deco buildings. Sometimes I'll drive through Los Angeles and you drive over these incredibly ornate bridges. And you're just like, how did the government ever build this? Why were they building things that were aesthetically pleasing that 100 years later are still standing? And when we have sound money again, we will get back to that place. It's funny looking at Bondor's graph. I'm looking at it. I'm like, well, if we had sound money, if our money didn't inflate and you just could make more money than you had to spend to live, and you just put it in a bank account and it grew with interest and that interest compounded over time, then you'd have the same thing. But we haven't had sound money in our entire lifetimes. And so it looks like magic to us. We're like, what? We could have more wealth later as opposed to less. Our lifestyle could actually increase as opposed to just we get poorer and poorer and poorer until the day we die. It's like we're conditioned to have a fiat mindset. And so when we get presented with the idea of sound money, it looks like this impossible science fiction, but it's not science fiction. It's Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, and it was gold. Like this, this is the thing that just it blows blows my mind. Is the average salary in the United States in 1913 was $800, $800 per year. Okay, that equated to let's see, 38.7 ounces of gold. Okay, so if you now take 38.7 ounces of gold times, I believe gold's around $3,400, $3,300. If you multiply it by $3,400, that's $129,200. And so it's just like, now again, that's average. The average salary, I think, in the United States is somewhere around 80K, something like that. So you're talking about losing roughly roughly 50K, 50K of, I mean, so almost half. Like you're approaching half. You have half as much. And again, for a lot of people, it's way worse than that. For some people, it's not as bad. But again, like the purchasing power is just disappearing because of the fact that we're operating and living our lives in a deficient currency system. And so again, as you move to a currency system that actually gets more valuable over time because of its scarcity and because of its adoption rate, you're going to start seeing this thing go the other way, and it's going to appear like magic. People are just going to be like, oh, you just got lucky. All these, it's like, no, we didn't get lucky in the truest sense. Like maybe again, we were fortunate to have our attention called to this thing at some point. But again, there's a ton of work that goes into understanding it, and just curiosity that goes into understanding these things. And so your curiosity is a commodity. Your attention is a commodity, and if you're giving it away willy-nilly to all kinds of ridiculous things, then yeah, you're not going to have spare, excess attention to be able to give to things that could, value, that could contribute and help you economically, whether it's Bitcoin or whether it's even just other economic opportunities. There's tons of people. We all have the same amount of time. We all have the same amount of attention, more or less. And again, but just people choose to steward it differently, and those actions compound and have consequences.
I think Anton had a excellent tweet on this exact phenomenon.
Prove it.
Okay, here we go. So this is Anton. This is you. I have watched people discover Bitcoin and become more conservative and grow deeper in relationship with Jesus Christ. At the same time, I've watched other people gamble on altcoins and fall away into secular progressivism. And I basically say, I 100% agree. I'm convinced, this is now me, that Bitcoin is the underlying reason the vibe shift has gone from degeneracy to less degeneracy for the first time in 100 years. Over the last 100 years, we have literally seen everyone's agency slowly erode, their time preferences slowly erode. One generation is like a little bit more degenerate than the previous, a little bit more degenerate. And we're now at the point where, wait a second, the vibe shift has literally shifted. We're not what the next iteration is not more degeneracy. The next iteration is now literally a little bit less degeneracy. We care a little bit more about beauty than we did before. We care a little bit more about stable relationships than we did before. We care a little bit more about conservative values than we did before. And I think, people say, oh, that's because we've all voted Republican. It's like, no, one, not everybody voted Republican. Two, there's a really strong case to be made that the only reason Trump won was because of his engagement with Bitcoin and the crypto community, right? This is a real economic powerhouse that's pushing civilization in a new direction, unlike the direction that the Federal Reserve has been pushing civilization for the last 100 years towards degeneracy. We're now pushing away from degeneracy. Now, of course, as we're all well aware, we're all still very much in the soup of degeneracy, but we're going in a different direction.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the story that comes to mind is the story of the prodigal sons, like the parable. And you have the one son who grows up in wealth, grows up in having everything he needs. He gets to the point where he demands his inheritance from his father, which is effectively telling his dad that he wishes he was dead so that he could get his money. And so then his father incredibly gives him his share of the inheritance. He runs off and he blows it on, hookers and blow, and all kinds of things. And he wakes up and comes to his senses and basically says, how many of my father's hired servants have a better life than I have? And so I think that just culturally, obviously I think the point that you made about Bitcoin affecting, tipping the election, I think that's true. There's like apparently 5%, if these numbers are to be believed, 5% of voters were single issue Bitcoin voters or crypto voters. And so I do see that being like potentially a tipping point thing. I do think in addition to that, there's this a fatigue, like sin and degeneracy has a shelf life. Like you can, there's a tipping point to where the degeneracy and the pain that comes from, sin and prolonged exposure to insanity gets tiring, and people just react against it. And so I think that that's part of what we've experienced. I don't think we've experienced anything like an actual meaningful cultural repentance where,
correct,
we've really seen like we've come to the end of our rope. I don't see that really to any degree. But I do think, again, just a lot of the shaming, like a lot of the left leaning stuff of like, you can't joke about these topics, you can't do all these things. Like it's just all the just cold dead restrictions. People are just like, shut up and go away. Like there's just a lot of people who are not religious, who are not conservative, who just were like, dude, I'm so sick of your harping on us and not letting us do stuff. And so again, at the same time, I'm hopeful that we're going to see more, real actual change over time. Because again, I still think there's still plenty of degeneracy and that people are still getting fatigued of. But yeah, I really do think it's one of these things. There's multiple factors that are coming into play. And again, we just have the opportunity to, with Bitcoin and with, lives, as I'm speaking as a Christian, like, we just go along. We just keep living our lives, and there's keep compounded consequences to the way that you're living, either positively or negatively. And, this is something what the book of Revelation says. It says, basically, let the righteous continue to live righteously. Let the unrighteous continue to live unrighteously. And basically, time will go by, things will compound, and basically it'll become clear, it'll become clear what the proper way of living is. And so, it's not that we need to run around and scream at the top of our lungs for people to change. Like there's some of this change that, hey, we'll see where we're both at in 10 years, 15 years and go from there.
Well said, guys. I think that we are coming up on the end here. Anton, if you have any last words, go for it. Otherwise, I'm going to shut us down.
Jordan said it pretty well. And yeah, things will compound. They'll compound for the better, or they will compound for the worse. And when everyone is cheating, there's this feeling that you're only cheating yourself if you're not cheating. And with fiat, we've all been cheated and we've been lied to for so long that it has just led to a culture of lying and cheating. And hopefully Bitcoin, because it is just true. it's just math. It's something that is provable. It is going to usher in a time period of truth.
Indeed. All right, guys. Thank you so much, Jordan, for popping on here. Anton, I'll be seeing you around. Peace. Thanks for tuning in to Better by Bitcoin. Bitcoin makes everything better. Like, subscribe, and follow us on X at BetterBYBTC, YouTube at BetterBYBitcoin. Not financial advice, mathematical certainty.